Welcome into K-State Online. I am Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway. Monday, and we've got good news for you, I guess, because we've got a couple of commitments to talk about. One for football, one for basketball. Both kind of just out of the blue. An alert that they were coming probably happened within minutes of each other and probably less than an hour ahead of when the commitments happened. And then both commitments happened basically simultaneously. So we've got a basketball junior college commitment to discuss for K-State. We have a football high school commitment to discuss for the Wildcats. Let's start, Drew, with Oliver Miller from Cherry Creek High School in Colorado. You noted it pretty much instantly that, hey, this is a guy coming from a powerhouse program. He had Big Ten offers from Minnesota and Purdue. There's a time where Ohio State was kicking the tires on this, and K-State goes out and they add an offensive lineman, another one to their class. 6'6", 310 is the listing for Oliver Miller, the offensive lineman. So what do you make of him being the commit based off the cat signal that came out, and what you expect from Oliver Miller?
Yeah, to be completely transparent, we saw the cat signal go out, and the first thing that goes through my head is like, okay, who could this be? Oliver Miller probably wouldn't have been in the top 10, but that was because I thought that he was more kind of taking his time and letting everything come to him and kind of just going from there. But I also like these commits that kind of come out of left field, like even surprise us, because you get in the information business, it becomes a little bit too predictable at times when you just know when something is going to happen. Player X is going to commit at this date and at this time. So when you get something like that, it's really fun. And like you said, Cherry Creek is a powerhouse high school. Went 13-1 this past year, won the state title game. It's never a bad thing to have inroads with one of the best high schools in the state of Colorado and one of the best in the country, because they routinely put out Power 4 players at all different kinds of positions. Another interesting note, just with Cherry Creek, before we really dive into Oliver Miller and Brian LePack and kind of how this recruitment goes, Cherry Creek is the same high school that George Fitzpatrick went to. And K-State had a deep connection with him when they recruited him in high school. You have the same relationship now with Oliver Miller, except now that relationship that you had with the Cherry Creek staff pays off for K-State because you end up with Miller out of high school.
So Brian LePack is the guy that ends up getting Oliver Miller into his room in the future. You noted in your story about it that Connor Riley gave the initial offer and everything there. So with Brian LePack adding another offensive lineman and being what seems to be a very charismatic guy on the recruiting trail, like how much of an impact do you think he had in playing a role in this getting done this quickly? And Miller now not going to take official visits to a couple of Big Ten schools. And when he comes to Manhattan next month, it's going to be as a committed prospect.
Yeah, Brian LePack really is shining on the recruiting trail. We talked about it a couple weeks ago on one of our recruiting updates, and it just keeps shining through again here with Oliver Miller. He played a really big role. Connor Riley had offered Miller initially on January 28th. And I'm trying to remember the exact timeline, but not very soon after that is when Connor Riley went to the Dallas Cowboys to be their offensive line coach. So then from there, LePack picked up where the relationship was because Miller had camped at K-State previously, and that's how K-State really knew about him. And again, something that K-State really prides himself on is their camp evaluations, and especially along the offensive line. And he's another one that has camped at K-State and will end up in Manhattan. But LePack did a majority of this recruitment because Riley had left. LePack really takes the reins from there, gets Miller to take an unofficial visit last month, April 5th, I believe, and then gets the official visit scheduled for June 5th. And then LePack was just in Colorado today, and that's when the commitment happened. So a lot of this it plays a little bit of hand in hand, kind of like with LaMarcus Barber, because he was offered by Connor Riley and recruited by Connor Riley, and then LePack took over. And then this time you're seeing Miller was offered by Riley while Riley was kind of on his way out to take the Cowboys job, and then LePac takes over and then nails the recruitment. What is interesting with this is K-State's probably going to take another offensive lineman, probably another tackle, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It can be kind of like a swing offensive lineman. We talked about numbers and dominoes. Well, this is a big domino because there's probably one more offensive line spot at K-State. So if you're an offensive lineman that wants in, like, you probably got to take advantage if you really want to be there.
Yeah. Just this entire class is going to be kind of about claiming your territory if you're one of these recruits that wants to have a spot at K-State. We've talked about it so much with running back, and obviously, I think offensive line, there's probably a little bit more wiggle room. They already have a couple in, but like, they have a lot of guys they like there, and K-State is getting themselves into a position where they can kind of be a little more selective at times with some of these positions. So it's gonna go fast. But Oliver Miller obviously wanted in, didn't want to miss out on the opportunity, and along the lines of what you said in the text, basically, like, obviously the size is there, and you really can't go wrong with taking guys from a program like Cherry Creek.
Yeah, I think that what we're seeing from Brian LePac that differs a little bit from what Connor Riley did along the offensive line with recruiting is you're seeing a lot bigger guys come in. Like LaMarcus Barber is in that like pushing 280, 290 territory. Oliver Miller's already 310 pounds as a junior in high school. So you're kind of seeing that those guys are just going to need to really be brought in and work more on strength and conditioning. They're going to lose probably a little bit of weight, but then gain it all back in strength. Where there were times with Connor Riley, K-State would take offensive linemen that were a little bit undersized and just really work them up to get to the weight. And then as far as like tape goes for Oliver Miller, if you like offensive line play, you'll love his tape because he's super, super athletic. Plays along the right side and plays right tackle for Cherry Creek. Can really get after it and run blocking. Yeah, is very, very athletic. So he'll stay at tackle going forward to the next level. What is also interesting is just how good of an athlete he is in space, because there are a few times where he gets out on a screen pass and just destroys somebody on the second level. So he has a lot of fun tape. And again, if you really like offensive line play, you'll really like Oliver Miller's junior tape.
So I think you said earlier, tackle is the expectation for him.
Yes.
With a player like this, where would the timeline be where he gets to K-State, and then how does the development look for Oliver Miller?
Yeah, offensive line is obviously just such a developmental position. You're going to see him redshirt his first year on campus because every offensive lineman does pretty much everywhere, unless they're like the elite of the elite. And then from there, I mean, there's going to be a lot of playing time to sell going forward along the offensive line. K-State loses a lot of offensive linemen, for example, like this after this season. I think that there's a potential that like 5 or 6 guys could depart from K-State. So, I mean, if he puts in all the work and maintains the weight and the strength and has his mind ready to go for the moment he gets on campus in Manhattan, there's no rule that says he can't play as a redshirt freshman. I mean, we've seen K-State the last 12 years have periods where redshirt freshmen offensive linemen come in and start and play and do really well. So it's not out of the question that he can play as a redshirt freshman.
Be interesting to see how it develops for Oliver Miller and K-State, but a good ad for the Wildcats. And now if you go and just kind of look to see where they're sitting at, we had talked about it a couple of times, but their commitment number, he ends up being number 4. And now we'll wait and see, because we're getting a couple weeks away from when things are really going to start to take off in the busy season that will come about for K-State on that front. But he is the second offensive lineman in the class, and now K-State is balanced out. They got 2 defensive guys, 2 offensive guys, LaMarcus Barber being the other offensive guy, the lineman from Shawnee. So that is the football side of things for K-State today. And before we move on to talk about the basketball commitment, let's stay talking football, Drew. We got the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. It's on the horizon. We're getting closer to that 3-month date. So 75% of our 1-year waiting period almost gone. And another thing that is almost gone, tickets to the Aer Lingus College Football Classic, hospitality packages, any of the travel packages that you've been waiting for. So jump on it right now as we really hit the home stretch here and people trying to finalize plans to go watch the Cats and Clones, a little Farmageddon in Dublin. You can go to cats2ireland.com for your travel and ticket info. And a small number of single game, just individual tickets remain. And if you want information on that, you can go to kstatesports.com and check out the tickets that they have available there. But a lot of this winding down and the supply is thinning out.
Yeah, tickets are going quick. My family added to our party of people going last week. So I think there's going to be like 18 or 19 of my family or friends that are going to Ireland. So,
well, good to know that cats2ireland.com still working for the Galloways. Do you have an Ireland fun fact for us to sneak in here?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got, so we've talked about the NFL game that's going to be in Ireland this year. And it's actually being played at Croke Park. And I was like, that's interesting. Like, obviously before this, Aviva Stadium was the only thing that I'd ever heard of in Ireland that like was a sporting venue. But Croke Park is actually the third largest by capacity sporting venue in Europe.
Wow. So what gets played at Croke Park?
It says that there is like Gaelic football is one of the number one things, and the international team or the national team for rugby in Ireland also plays there.
Makes sense.
They've also had some concerts. It holds 82,000 people, by the way.
That's big time. That's big time. It looks impressive from the outside. I'm looking at a picture of it now. Inside, not so much. So this might be the Boone Pickens Stadium of Ireland, where they put on a good show on the outside. They make you think, oh, that place must be really nice. And then you go there and you're like, I don't know.
You'll enjoy this. U2 has played the most concerts at Croke Park. Right. Garth Brooks spent 8 days playing 5 different shows at Croke Park.
That's an upset.
Taylor Swift has played 2 shows there.
Okay, makes sense.
And then Coldplay, Beyonce, One Direction also had 3 concerts there.
Okay. All right. So most of those make sense. Garth Brooks, a little out of left field. So, although I don't know, maybe Ireland has a big country music population. I don't know.
Apparently, I was just looking at the quick Wikipedia there. He spent 8 days there, like in the 2010s, and also did 2 shows there in the 90s.
Well, probably doesn't hold a candle to what he did at T-Mobile Center in Kansas City.
His number is retired at the T-Mobile Center.
Yeah, twice retired. Man, yeah,
he's the Kobe of the T-Mobile Center.
Yeah, hang them both up there. All right, let's move on. Speaking of Kobe, basketball, that's really the only connection that these two guys have.
I was trying to figure out where you were going with that.
Although people hate it. I'm very publicly a non-Kobe guy. I know that's a controversial take to have these days, but I am, and Dirk's Sun Demon the 2011 playoffs, but that's beside the point right now. Let's talk about the new K-State men's basketball team member, Stephen Osei, a center, stands at 6'11", originally from Canada. He spent some time in his younger days playing U17 and U16 international basketball in the U17 World Cup for Canada. Played his freshman season at Casper Community College last year, played in just over 20 games. Prior to going to Casper, was a 3-star prospect in the class of 2024 and ended up in the industry ranking being 262nd nationally, 32 amongst centers, and went to Casper, averaged around 11 and 7 a game, points and rebounds. And now K-State adds him into the fold here. Little nugget, he was teammates with Abdi Bashir's brother Abdul at Casper. this past year, so there is a slight connection there like that. This is an interesting ad, Drew, because number one, if everybody read Derek Young's story on the commitment from Osei, unlikely that he plays in 25-26 for K-State. He got injured towards the tail end of the year at Casper, so he didn't play the last like 7 games for Triple C up in Wyoming, and he now will likely redshirt this coming year for K-State, a team that still has some glaring holes on their roster. So from a player standpoint, just in general, it's nothing overwhelming. I wouldn't expect any like significant things from Stephen Osei, but like you get 15 roster spots in college basketball, and if you can stash a guy for a year and bring him into the fold, then it makes some sense. It's fine. It's not a problem for you. The problem comes though that this is K-State and that the current roster still has pretty big holes to make this a good team next season. Where if this was a program that was on a different trajectory and had not missed the NCAA tournament in laughable fashion the last 2 seasons, very public laughable fashion for different reasons the last 2 years, then maybe I can buy this. I can pick up what you're putting down. Does not work out for me on this one. I have a tough time seeing how this makes sense, and it seems like a misstep by K-State to bring in a guy that, when you have holes on your roster right now, is a guy that can't contribute to you next year. And even if he is able to get to the point to contribute, you don't know that you're going to want him to, or that he's going to be good enough to do it at this level.
Yeah, it is a little hard to understand right now, because like we've talked about, K-State only has the 15 spots available to them, but like we only anticipate them taking 13 guys. So you add in Elias Rapiak, which we anticipate is still going to be wrapped up. That might not ever be announced. That might be something that just happens, like somebody sees them on social media.
And fair or unfair, that's, to me, like, that's bad news for this staff, because until it's like a done deal or a known deal, like, it's tough for people to just say, oh, that's going to happen, because we've seen a lot of recruiting scenarios with this staff where it seemed like things were done and it didn't come to fruition.
Yes, that is true. And then, they just had Marcus Johnson from Bowling Green on campus. Well, nothing is really known about Johnson's recruitment. You would anticipate, since not much is known and K-State is the only known visit that he's taken, K-State's probably going to get him if they really want him. So then that brings you down to 1 spot left. And I think that there are more holes on this roster than just 1 spot. Like we laid it out after Andre Kostic committed a few weeks ago. Like, we still wanted them to get another ball handler and another probably big that could play. Well, you get Johnson hypothetically, and you get Osei. You didn't get either of those. So it just kind of throws into like this roster is, it feels kind of like they're kind of grasping for straws a little bit, because it doesn't appear that it's going to really work at this level, because right now Osei is hurt enough that like it is already like known that he's probably not going to play next year. When guys have redshirted, they don't typically stay. So like that's where it's hard for me to get kind of like excited about this, because I think that Osei could be like a fine player down the line, but you're taking a guy that's hurt. He's hurt bad enough that that you have to redshirt him. Guys haven't typically stayed after redshirting at K-State. It feels like you could have done a little bit better here.
Or or just nothing at all. Like
Yeah.
you could, I think you have to wait to make sure that you've got everything in order with some of the guys that you think that you have in the fold. Like you mentioned, there are two clear-cut guys that seem like they might be options for K-State right now, and Rapiak, the German forward that K-State has been in the fold for a while, and like you said, seems like that's in a good spot for him, but you just don't really know until it's done. But the Kostic thing became public, but Rapiak was on the radar before Kostic was. So we'll see how it goes there. And then you mentioned Marcus Johnson, the transfer, which I think would be a fascinating ad. I'm actually for that if they get things done with Marcus Johnson. But I mean, again, we're going to put him on this list if it ends up happening, and look at the roster for next year. How many of those guys are guaranteed top 7 rotational players in the Big 12 next season?
I mean, you could argue that there's probably 2, maybe 1.5.
I mean, I think
I would
I'd be a
I would
little bit more generous than that. I would say, like Tyreek Smith would be in a rotation probably, but
are we okay, so are we talking when you say
they're
those, are you
they're a
talking
part of
like
your 7 main guys that are going to play. So
like upper half of the league or just the league in general?
well, it should be whatever the cutoff in your mind is that gets a team in the Big 12 into the NCAA tournament, because
All right. So if it's
that's really the
upper
only thing that matters this year. If K-State misses the NCAA tournament again, it's bad news bears.
if it's upper half of the Big 12, I think it's only 2. And that's somebody like
Johnson and Bashir, or Johnson and Kostic.
I love Kostic and I like what he can do, but I think that it's probably Johnson and Bashir. Like because I think that you just know more about Bashir to where I think that he could be a top 7 rotational player. I mean, heck, like our Alabama and Auburn were trying to get Bashir. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, there are a lot of high level teams in for Bashir. I think it would look like this right now with the roster that you see in front of you. It's a guarantee that Johnson would find minutes, Smith would find minutes, Bashir and Kostic would find minutes. That's 4, but like if we're pegging only 4 of these guys for that role, then they're all probably going to have to start, and that's not really good. Also, it says Kamari McGee there. That's supposed to be Kamari McGriff. We were talking about Ashton McGee beforehand, and I just got I got those flipped around.
And by the way, it's also like it's still not a guarantee that Tyreek Smith will
gets his waiver.
Yeah, will even get his waiver and play.
So that's why when I look at a guy like Stephen Osei, I think there's a world in which this makes sense for a lot of teams. Like if this was just, we can take any like middle tier team that made the NCAA tournament last year from the Big 12. So like you could, if this was Baylor, okay, this is a fine addition, whatever. Like they've got things rolling. They're obviously not where they were 4 years ago or whatever in the standing of college basketball, but they're still making the tournament every year. They're getting some really good players in. Their roles are kind of defined. We've talked about Baylor a lot this offseason because they went out and pretty quickly identified their needs, built most of their roster, and defined roles early in the offseason. And now they're sitting pretty to where they could take a guy like Stephen Osei and say, you know what, a little banged up. He's going to have to take a year to develop, and then we'll see what he can give us down the stretch. But K-State's not really in that position right now. You still have a lot of spots where you need to be adding players that have the possibility of playing 10 to 15 minutes a game for you or more. And Osei definitely isn't that next year. And junior college players in the year 2025, not many of them are guarantees to ever get to that point in their careers. They're already lottery tickets and shots in the dark. Now one that's been hurt and played at a place like Casper that like that area of the United States doesn't play a lot of like great junior college basketball. It's remote for guys to get to. It's tough to make the case for them. I mean, the team that knocked Casper out of their region tournament this year lost in the second round in Hutch by over 30 points. Lost by 32 points in the second round. Like they showed up to Hutch, they won their opening round game, kind of the play-in or whatever, lost the next game by 32 points. So, and that was the team that Casper lost to in the semifinals of their region tournament. And as I mentioned, like pedestrian numbers in my eyes for a guy that is 6'11". And so, you know, there are plenty of bigger players in junior college basketball, but not many of them get to that size. And he was only at 11-7. Like, if you're adding a junior college player at this current stage of college basketball, I want the numbers to be eye-popping. I want to be blown away and think, uh-oh, like this is going to be something special. And so now you look, this is back-to-back years where K-State has added a junior college player in the offseason. Moby Ike was a part of that last year. But, Drew, you know what Moby did at Ellsworth Community College last year? He had 19 and 10.
As I say, he averaged a lot of a high percentage from the field too, and just
that 19 was also and 10, different. And he played. You know, his best role for K-State was like 8 minutes a game,
and that was also different because like that was like D2 junior college, so like that was even crazier. But like this just JUCO recruiting in 2025 for basketball, it just doesn't excite you like it used to. Like
there's a reason why, like, go back 10, 15 years as a Hutch native, and you'd be sitting there in the sports arena watching the JUCO tournament, and you'd see all types of coaches amongst college basketball roll through there. And I didn't go last year, but the year before that when Barton won it all. You know who, like, the notable coach that I saw there was? It was Frank Martin, recruiting for a crappy UMass team. And you look at like the productive stories, like that Barton team that I'm talking about. Two of their best players went to SIUE last year. Now, they did great things at SIUE. They played a lot. They got into the NCAA tournament for the first time in school history. But like SIUE isn't going to come win games in the Big 12 despite that. And like I know it's like a simplification of junior college recruiting, but I just think it's kind of a waste. And you add on top of this all the other kind of things that we would have to give us some idea of how this might go. It's another big that's going to redshirt allegedly. And the last time that happened at K-State, by fall came in and he was gone. He didn't even, he had the red shirt and then he left. Or who knows if he actually gets the red shirt, because he did play last year amongst the other ludicrous things that's taken place with roster construction, trying to get a red shirt for a guy that played in like 5-6 games in a season when it's supposed to be a zero tolerance rule in college basketball now. That's more of a referendum on the idiocy of the NCAA. Besides the point, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. There's a world in which it works out, and it's not like Stephen Osei is maybe a bad player. There's just a lot of things that don't add up to make sense for this addition for K-State right now. If it was some other team that the trajectory looked different, it's fine. Stash him and hope he turns into something for you down the stretch. K-State is not in the position right now to be stashing players. It can't happen, because like what we've talked about with this roster, I mean, Taj Manning is not going to give you any real minutes this year. Moby at best is going to, like, if you're a good team, Moby is playing at most 8 minutes a game for you. David Castillo, like, it's time to put up or shut up. Like, he's got to find it this year, and he didn't find it last year, and it has to happen now. But what we saw last year, no guarantee that it does. Stephen Osei can't play for you this year in all likelihood. Xavier Wilson, a high school recruit that I actually like a lot, but that's a developmental thing. He can't help you win games at a high level this year. Like, I'm gonna put the roster back up here, Drew. But
that's
go ahead.
And that's 5 guys, which means that like the other 8 have to be really good, and that there's no guarantee that other 8 really works out in K-State's favor.
Yeah, it's just like of these guys right here, Smith, Johnson, Bashir, Kostic. That's 4 guys on the roster that are without a doubt going to give you 10 minutes a game. Without a doubt, probably going to get at least 15 minutes. And then the cutoff would turn into, based on what K-State is, Johnson, Bashir, and Kostic are guaranteed 20-minute a game guys. Kamari McGriff, when I saw how it would translate from UNC Wilmington to the Big 12 and being a role guy, I think there's a world where like 10 minutes in the right situation would be his max. I think for K-State, he's going to have to be a 10 to 15 minute a game guy.
The problem becomes if Tyreek Smith doesn't get a waiver and now you've taken a guy that can't play and you only have Kamari McGriff to play the 5, and we're sitting here on May 19th, and the portal is running out of guys that are Power 5 worthy. Like it's not looking great right now.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest problem, I think.
If you want to add into this, you would look at it and say, okay, who's going to come in and basically be guarantees that we don't really have to worry about what they're going to do production-wise at this level? Nate Johnson, because as we talked about, he won the MAC Player of the Year. He was also their Defensive Player of the Year. You don't just like accidentally win Defensive Player of the Year as, a player of his position. Sometimes you can if you're like 6'10", 7 foot. You're just tall and you plug things up in there. Looking at you, Musa Cisse, or any of the random big dudes that Oklahoma State had floating around for a little bit. Musa Cisse was fine. I actually, if he was available in a real possibility, I would have taken him at K-State at various points. But Johnson and Bashir are really the only guys that you can look at and say, okay, I trust that in whatever role they come into at K-State, they're at least going to be able to handle it to a serviceable level, I think. Like, think along the lines of Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry came to K-State and unfortunately couldn't do more than what he was meant to do. And that's the position that K-State put him in. I think Nate Johnson and Abdi Bashir, if they get to play the role that they're meant to, they're going to be A-okay. Like they're guaranteed to perform at this level because of their history. And like a guy like Bashir, he played high major competition last year as the only threat on his team, and he was still able to put up numbers in those games. But then outside of that, you start to look around at some of this other stuff. It gets really dicey because McGriff, I don't know that translates from UNC Wilmington. Tyreek Smith, again, it'll translate. We have a track record there to suggest that it will, but it's not in a role that's going to help you. Like, that won't define if you win or lose games or anything. Then you go down the rest of it, and Kostic, you think maybe it'll work out, but you don't know when a guy's coming in from, like, he's a wild card. Same thing would go for then Elias Rapier, who's going to come into the fold. Marcus Johnson, I think he'll help you score occasionally, but how is his role going to work in the Big 12? Like, that's another guy shifting from the MAC, and then all the other guys, massive flaws in trying to pinpoint what happens. Like, you're once again putting yourselves in a position where the hole that you need to get to the NCAA tournament is like the size of the end of a ballpoint pen. It is very, very small for K-State. And that's why the Osei edition, it could work out long-term, but long-term doesn't mean anything to K-State basketball right now. It shouldn't. The only thing that should matter to K-State basketball and Jerome Tang right now is what happens in 25-26. Because if you miss it again this year, then it just becomes clear you're not going to get this train back on the tracks. You can't miss 3 straight tournaments with all these resources and seemingly the first 2 years of that having things work out the way that you wanted them to, and you still collapsed. Now this year, like we have an actual train wreck smacking us in the face right now, Drew, and we're looking at it for K-State, and we're supposed to believe that it's somehow going to go better than the last 2 years. It's tough to do.
It's really tough to see how it works out because they really have to thread the needle to get to where they want to go. So that's why, like, even if Osei works out long term, I don't think it's necessarily a great process to take a guy that can't play.
Yeah. Anyway, Stephen Osei, welcome to Manhattan, Kansas. That'll do it for today's KSO show. For Drew Galloway, I'm Mason Voth. Thanks for watching and listening. If you want more on the editions of Oliver Miller and Stephen Osei, head over to KStateOnline.com and On3. Get signed up if you're not a member already. Join for your first week at just $1. You get access not only to all the KSO scoops and everything else. As someone said, Drew is killing it with the scoops today. So that's big news. Confirmation, Drew, on if this is a real picture.
I mean, it may or may not be.
Look past the fact that body is a woman very clearly. That's just, that's what AI generated when I asked him to show me a picture of somebody holding a gun up to ice cream scoops. So that's, but I put Drew's face on it. You can get all that and a lot more going on over at KSO right now. And hop in there and discuss what you think of the 2 new commitments today, because there are a lot of thoughts from a lot of Cat fans on the addition of Stephen Osei. We'll have you cover more Cat news tomorrow. Be back here for another KSO show, and we'll always be on over at On3 and KStateOnline.com.